Welcome back. You're watching KTN Prime.
Right, and this is, of course, the segment you have been waiting for, Jailed Juveniles. Now, they have killed and they have raped. We're talking about teenage criminals. And tonight, we debut our special series on young boys who choose a life in crime. On Jailed Juveniles tonight, Wilson Mburu brings us the story of a 17-year-old boy who was convicted of robbery with violence.
He could be the child next door, but some of these boys' rap sheets are taller than them. From robbery with violence.
Tukamshika akiwa analala kwa kitanda, tukamfunga kamba, tukamtoa nje, tukamsamba kidogo, alafu akatupea pesa.
To murder.
Sasa katika ile kumrushia kamgonga hapa akaanguka tu.
To dealing narcotics.
Sasa bangi nilikuwa nanipatia yani kama chakula yani najinunulia na najitegemea. Nilikuwa nauza.
These juveniles have been there and done that, and now they are behind bars as the government attempts to rehabilitate and make honest citizens out of them.
For the first time ever, our TV cameras have been allowed inside a juvenile correctional center, as they are commonly known or officially known, a postal institution. The boys held in here will give you heart-wrenching stories of how they fell into a life of crime even before they could get an ID card. We'll talk to the parents, we'll talk to the prison administration, we'll talk to their counselors to see the kind of rehabilitation they're going through so they can ensure they don't ever go back in here.
Go out to breakfast, come back, change.
This is Shikusa Postal Institution. In here, boys aged between 15 and 17 years are held for a maximum 3 years for engaging in criminal activities. During this time, they get a chance to change their ways. Several training programs are offered, as well as psychological counseling before they are then released back into the society. One of the boys undergoing rehabilitation is Robert Wafula Shikuku, age 17. His crime, robbery with violence. Sentence, 3 years behind bars. At his tender age, Wafula has already spent 8 months at a maximum security prison. His entrance into crime started as just another case of teenage truancy.
Marafiki wenye nilikuwa nao kaanza kunifunza vitu kidogo kidogo, kuiba, kaanza kuiba kidogo kidogo, kapanda.
But then it degenerated into petty crime as he became more and more comfortable with it.
Nilikuwa tu kazi ya wizi tu, kuiba vitu ndogo ndogo, mpaka nikafika mahali nikapata sasa kengi kubwa.
Ukapata?
Kengi kubwa, yani ile ya wizi ya kuiba na wale watu wakubwa.
Gang.
Wenyewe sasa.
It was inevitable that the law would eventually catch up with him, and it did. His first arrest came here when he was just 15 years old. He was charged with breaking and stealing, but the case was shortly dismissed. This acted as a stamp of authority that Wafula and his gang would be invincible, so they took it a notch higher. The first step was to choose a prime target, and they zeroed in on a local businessman.
Niliona huyu kijana ako na pesa, na ni mtu mgumu, hataki kusikia mambo yetu kwa area, yani anajifanya yeye ni majua sana. Sasa nilipoona hivyo, kaongea na vijana wale tunafanyanga nao kazi ya uhalifu, tukamshika akiwa analala kwa kitanda, tukamfunga kamba, tukamtoa nje, tukamsamba kidogo, alafu akatupea pesa, tukachitoa.
Aliwapatia pesa ngapi?
Ilikuwa 75,000.
The victim's father, Ezekiel Walubengo, was a Fula's relative. He was awoken in the middle of the night by some commotion in the cottage he had built for his son.
They told him, kichwa chini. Ukibeba kichwa, tutakukata. And when this one, the elder one tried to raise the head, and they started knocking on the head.
Wafula was arrested 3 days later after one of his gang members snitched on him. He was the mastermind of that operation.
Unajua wakuja tu polisi peke yao. walienda wakachukua shule primary 2 tofauti. Sasa wale wanafunzi vile walikuja walisurround boma mzima, kila mtu na mawe, wengine mpini, alafu na raia, alafu pamoja na maskari.
So ukijaribu kutoroka watakupiga.
Sasa nikijaribu kutoka ndugi watanishika ama nifanyie kitu mbaya.
In neighboring Bungoma County, we find Wafula's roots at a remote village. We soon find that some of the people known to Wafula are very protective and speak of him fondly.
Ananisaidianga kazi, anajua kazi, hata kutengeneza majiko, ya kutengeneza nini jembe hako.
It gets increasingly difficult to have her admit that Wafula is a criminal.
Hiyo ni mara ya moja tu ya kwanza. Tena mwenzake ndiye alifanya wakamshika.
Unasema yeye hapo.
Hata alikuwa anatengeneza hata hapa baiskeli. Sasa alisituka tu wanamshika.
After spending a weekend in the police cells, Wafula was charged with robbery with violence in a trial that was as dramatic as his life had been.
Wakati waliulizwa walifanya hii, they answered boldly, yes. Wakauliza mwingine, mulienda mkafanya ABCD? Yes. But the third one akasema, I was not there. No, the one that was staying here also said yes. Hata ukimuuliza atakwambia niambie magistrate, yes, I did it.
And when the verdict came,
yeye aliniambia nimekuhukumu kifungo maisha yako yote gerezani, kama hujaridhika na kesi uende utuma appeal baada ya 14 days.
he was sent to the Kodianga maximum security prison where he would spend the next 8 months. Inmates hovered over the minor, ready to pounce.
Wafungwa wanaweza kufanya mambo mbaya, anakupea kitu yake unakula, kisha ikifika mataimu yake anakurukia.
What he did not know is that at 17, he should not have been given a life sentence or sent to a maximum security prison. The law is a bit lenient to minors. One gets to have a second chance to change their ways. All this he would learn from a fellow inmate.
Anajua kufanya kesi. Akaniambia aniandikie barua application ya appeal, utume kotini baada ya 4 days alafu niitwe.
To his relief, his appeal was successful and consequently, his sentence was reduced from life imprisonment to 3 years in a Boston institution. His friends, however, were not as lucky.
Hata ule mwenzangu mwenye alifungwa naye alifungwa condemn. Alifungwa condemn. Alihukumiwa kifungo ya kunyongwa.
For the whole 8 months he spent at Kodiaga, none of his parents knew where he was, and neither did they know that he was serving a life sentence. After all, he wasn't living at home as he had run away. Wafula enrolled in a masonry class at Shikusa, and he now hopes that he'll become a better person. He says he is ready to go back home.
Sasa nimebadilika kabisa. Yaani nikitoka hapa hivi niko na experience yangu. Kama ni ya kuchenga, nachenga, mtu ananipea pesa, natumia shughuli zangu.
Can you send 2,000 on value at this branch?
Jack Anyanje, a documentation officer at the Boston institution, tells us Wafula's case is not isolated. Most of these boys want what their parents cannot provide.
Some will tell you, oh, I didn't have food at home, there's nobody to take care of me. Others are pushed in by the peers, the friends. Tell them, if you stole, it's good. And others, it's just a habit maybe that has developed into them. So they go into that stealing. But when mostly when they get here, you see that really, they feel sorry for what they have done.
Perhaps the most pertinent question is, what will become of this juvenile when he leaves this institution, when he returns home to the 2-roomed madhouse, with his parents struggling to make ends meet? Wilson Mburu, KTN, for the Jailed Juveniles series. Tomorrow night on Jailed Juveniles, he defiled a 4-year-old. Will the society accept him back after rehabilitation?
Hata kuja hapa, karibu jina yangu ni watu.
Akirudi mimi